Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Blockchain Marketing Insights. Um, Today, I'm going to talk about a bunch of things happening in the crypto world that are kind of interesting and exciting. But before we get into it, I'm just going to take a quick look here and show you that the market is at 124 billion market cap for cryptocurrencies. There's 2,116 cryptocurrencies currently listed there, and Bitcoin dominance is hovering around 52.5%. So that's to be expected right about now, given the current state of affairs in terms of price action and price movement. And what we're seeing here are, it's a green day, yes, mostly, slightly up, 1%, 2%, 0.5%. And what we're seeing is a slight price adjustment going up, and now staying kind of in a tightening mode, or so it seems. If you listen to technical analysts, I listen to them, I analyze it, but I don't put too much weight behind it, because we all know there are many other factors that affect price apart from just technical analysis. I'm not discounting it completely, but you can't put your full faith and confidence into it, because there's just too much at play that can change those things. So, rather than focus on that and say, it's nice to see things moving up, but it doesn't really matter if you know how to trade, and it doesn't really matter also if you believe in this long term. What does matter, let's not look at the charts. Okay, let's skip the charts. What does matter is you're still seeing things like this, right? Like, never mind the price, right? Scientists from MIT and Berkeley and Stanford are designing an improved Bitcoin. Okay. Well, I personally think this is a bit of a clickbaity headline, I want to say, because they're not improving Bitcoin, right? They're just making a new cryptocurrency, calling it Unit E, right? Unit E. Why they call it Unit E, who knows? But that is what they call it, right? They basically say that because of the scalability issues and transactions per seconds, issues that Bitcoin has at the underlying level, which is like 7 transactions per second, they're never going to be able to compete. In the Bitcoin world, it will never be able to compete with things like Visa and MasterCard that does around 24,000 transactions per second. And of course, the argument is, if you're pro-Bitcoiner, that what doesn't really matter, because second layer solutions can solve that. And if you're anti-Bitcoiner, you can say, well, it seems ridiculous to have second layer solutions when they're not necessary, when you can just embed a faster speed into a better technology, which has already been done in many cases, right? Many cryptos are much faster than Bitcoin, obviously. That doesn't mean that they have, the same properties that it has in terms of everything else. So there's always a good back and forth debate, et cetera, et cetera. But what's interesting, right, and they claim that they're going to launch this thing by the summer of 2019. And basically, they think that they will be doing many thousands of transactions per second, tens of thousands or 10,000 transactions per second to start with. I think that's quite a bold claim. Let's see if they can do it. Of course, scalability matters a lot. That is the whole point of this. And it's an interesting article, not because of the competitive technology being developed, but because of the fact that there is competitive technology being developed in a down market, right? Researchers and academics who like to study future technologies and involve themselves in them don't usually want to bet on things they don't think are going away, or that they think are going away, right? Yes, academics and researchers are not interested in developing future software, future technology, future protocols that no one is going to use, unless it's just for research purposes only, without thinking this might actually be useful. Right? Well, in many cases in academics, they're not concerned with, making a dollar, obviously. It's not usually their main concern. They're academics and they're researchers. It's the university's job or the institution's job to figure out how to make money from selling whatever. But the researchers themselves usually don't involve themselves in projects based on a capital basis. But they also don't involve themselves in projects that have no future potential use case or interest or validity or usefulness or, even just learning from. And they wouldn't invest their time and effort to learn something that they were not going to learn something from eventually. Right? It doesn't make sense. They don't do that. They are studying things and applying their knowledge in areas where they see a bright future. It's not always as noble an ambition as, let's say, when Nikola Tesla invented wireless electricity, right? Or the concept of it, right? By saying we can tap into the ionosphere and send electricity around the world for free practically, right? And he tried his hardest to figure out ways to do wireless electricity and started with safe electricity and the whole deal, right? All that, which he essentially gave to the world, right? A lot of those inventions that we have today, no one could have imagined them 100 years ago when Nikola Tesla invented this stuff. And yet he invented it, right? And yet he had also investors who believed in him, who invested in his crazy scientific inventions, right? And yet he did all of these things despite all of the insane negativity surrounding his genius, right? This is more telling, should be more telling to you or to anyone who's listening to this about the direction and the trends of the growing crypto and blockchain markets. Like, the price action is kind of a joke at this point. Price action will go up, price action will go down. It's irrelevant. Developments like these show that there is actually a future, right, in the academic area of this. Right? We all know what that means. If you're trying to train academically people to learn this stuff, it means you've already gotten past the point, right, of just it being a bunch of cowboys learning how to do stuff on the fly, or anarcho-capitalists, or whatever they want to call themselves, OG Bitcoiners or whatever. We are now at the point where if you want to learn this stuff, you go to the best schools for it already, right? And that's already since some time. And now at the best schools for it, they're already creating their own crypto projects, cryptocurrencies. That's not, that's not a sign of this thing is going away anytime soon. That is a sign of this is growing. And you are still early enough to be in it, ahead of 95 to 99% of the people out there. They recently did a survey and asked a bunch of citizens in a bunch of countries, 40 countries all around the world, whatever. Just asked everyone, like, hey, do you own any crypto? And the ranges, were ranging from anywhere from, a few percent to up to, I think Turkey had 18% of the people had, some crypto, unspecified, right? Undefined, but just some cryptocurrency. So in some countries you have more than 5 or 10 or, 15% answering that they had crypto, but they didn't survey everyone. And there's a high chance that the people who answered that survey or people who are more likely to have crypto in the first place, right? But if it's true, if up to 18% of the market, well, it's not 18%, if the average is 5%, right, on that survey. So if up to 5% of the market has some crypto, first of all, yay, because that's like a couple percent more than I would even thought at the moment. But more importantly, it means that there's still 95% to go, right? That's like 19x, right? So do the math. Whatever it's at now, in terms of usefulness in your life and practicality, these developments will only make it more useful and practical, and will only encourage more people to see that it makes a lot of sense to use cryptocurrencies instead of fiat, for a lot of different reasons. And here are some examples. Here we go. Here's what I want to talk about. Here are some examples on ways people can use cryptocurrency. This is from Coin Central. They have a nice article on blockchain uses. I have talked a lot about blockchain uses, obviously, on this show. And right there, you see at the top of their list, blockchain uses, banking the unbanked. And they talk about how, especially in Africa and developing countries, having a crypto wallet can help you circumvent even smart or mobile payment systems that they have, like M-Pesa, which let you basically send money peer-to-peer in a very convenient way relative to having not node banking services, which is the case for a lot of people in Africa. And M-Pesa lets people send money directly, and there's like a merchant go-between where they can, it's kind of like a Western Union but with a phone and without all the service fees. And so a lot of people find that to be a better alternative to banking in traditional banks, where it's much harder to have a bank account in some parts of Africa, or in many parts even. And it's much harder to use a traditional bank account there also. So, mobile solutions like M-Pesa are great, but they still require middlemen. And those middlemen can, in theory, stop your transfer. They can, in theory, they can apply censorship to you. They can prevent you from making your payment or receiving your money or whatever. It doesn't happen often. As far as I know, I don't think it's ever happened on M-Pesa, but it doesn't mean it couldn't. Right? It's not a cryptocurrency. There are middlemen touching and controlling your money and making decisions whether or not to send this on or not. So, cryptocurrency fixes that problem. And as you guys probably know, I do marketing for a number of different blockchain and crypto projects, and one of them is Ethlyte.tech. That's ETHLYTE.tech, right? And Ethlyte is built entirely for banking the unbanked. So, I mean, literally right here, this article by Coin Central, right, which I did not pay to have them write or anything, the very first blockchain use they list is banking the unbanked. Well, that's precisely what Ethlyte does. And that is its single focus, whereas Bitcoin is like a neutral coin. Anyone can use it for anything kind of thing, which is wonderful, but it doesn't necessarily solve the problem of the unbanked entirely in terms of delivering them other financial products that they can use in the real world today. So Bitcoin is awesome, really awesome, for many reasons, and censorship resistance is one of those reasons, right? And having the ability to send and receive money without having to have a bank account is one of those reasons. But let's say you go into a shop today and you've got Bitcoin and you're in Africa and you're in a city, but that city, that merchant, that shop does not accept your Bitcoin. What do? Well, if you have Ethlyte, pretty soon you will have their crypto wallet and an exchange, which lets you exchange between other currencies they might accept. And further down their roadmap, you will have a debit card, which will literally just automatically transfer upon purchase your Ethlyte crypto into fiat currency. And right there on your debit card, you'll be able to make your purchase, or on your gift card. Same thing. You can buy a gift card with Ethlite cryptocurrency, and whoever you give it to can spend it in a shop that accepts it, as fiat. So, yeah, and you can have escrow services and insurance services and P2P loans, and there's no shortage of other financial services you could use by having a coin like or a token like Ethlite. That's why I think it's very interesting that banking the unbanked is. I mean, it's one of the reasons that I'm so into Ethlite is because when everyone talks about blockchain, banking the unbanked is usually one of the main or the first topic they bring up, right? It's all about financial services for those who got screwed over by the banking system one way or the other. Whether you got screwed over by the banking system in the States or in Europe, during 2008, and you got in really, really early, or whether you got screwed over by virtue of the fact that you happen to be born in Africa, right? No fault of your own. You were born in a continent that just doesn't have good banking services because they've been blacked out by or blocked out by all the central banking systems for whatever reasons to make it such that banking in Africa is very hard, right? It's no fault of your own. But it doesn't matter what the reason is. Maybe you're born in Asia somewhere and similar thing happened. You're born in some place where there might be tons and tons of extremely well-off people, but you are personally struggling just to make ends meet, and you're not uncommon in that sense. Most of your fellow countrymen are the same way, and you have no access to regular financial services, and it's really hard for you to get along. So what do? Right? Well, Ethlite solves that. Bitcoin solves that. Other coins solve that. Even Ethereum, solves that in some way. But Ethlite is designed to have to give really, really top financial services for the real world today, and that I think anyway, banking the unbanked is one of the main reasons that I find this stuff very interesting. Another reason is, of course, censorship resistance, right? Like whether you agree with these guys or not. Here's an example of in the same article, Jordan Peterson and David Rubin, who are both kind of conservative or new conservative, whatever you want to call them, YouTubers or talking heads, personalities who are conservative and talk about their or I don't know how you really define. Well, it doesn't matter, conservative, whatever you think their opinions are. They have their opinions. They espouse them. They have followers. They are very vocal, and sometimes it doesn't matter if they have controversial topics or not. The platform Patreon, which they were both on, recently closed their accounts or announced they would be closing their accounts, right? And as such, these guys had to decide, well, what are they going to do, right? They got censored by Patreon because Patreon didn't like their views, okay? That's just literally censorship. With Bitcoin, had they been accepting Bitcoin and building their following in Bitcoin the whole time, nobody can shut them down, right? And so they're currently testing. You can see here a QR code from David Rubin. He's doing a little test. He's saying that, his Patreon's shutting down, and now he's going to see if he can accept Bitcoin as a solution. So we'll see. It'll be interesting whether or not these people are able to rebuild their audience completely and bigger using a decentralized solution. And whether or not they do, will that be better or worse for them, professionally or as far as they care? And since they're so vocal about caring about their freedom more than their, bank account size necessarily, well, good luck to them. Hopefully that's the case, and hopefully they will not have to worry about, I don't know what they're, honestly, well, I've seen them both speak. I'm not going to comment on what I think about their opinions, whether I agree with them or not. But I believe in free speech more than I believe in censorship. I believe that people should be, censorship should only be applied when absolutely necessary. It's a pretty extreme thing, right? Like if it can save a life or something, then maybe you can, then you can censor, right? But short of that, I find it to be a horrifying thing, and not good for anything. And so again, I'm not promoting their philosophies or even saying if I agree with them on their philosophies, but I absolutely will defend people's right to speak. And I think that, Patreon is making a huge mistake. Huge mistake. Like, a huge mistake. And this will absolutely drive away people from their platform, and they deserve that for doing this. Because, whatever if these people are espousing hatred or evil or violence, okay, absolutely, you have the right to shut that down. But short of that, short of them causing harm to people or inciting hatred or things like that, I don't know, are they? If you think so, feel free to let me know. But, I think this is a perfect case of censorship resistance. And there are others, like this guy here, Chris, the Cryptoverse Coney. Like, if you guys don't know who this guy is, you really should, because he is an amazing educator about cryptocurrency. He does a great job teaching people for free, right, on YouTube videos that are frankly great. He gives people a ton of free information. And yeah, of course he has courses and stuff that he sells. That's what he does. He sells courses to teach people at a professional level or at a very high level, about cryptocurrencies and blockchain and all this other stuff. And he's like an educator. I mean, he's a crypto educator. Okay, call him that. He's a Bitcoin educator, crypto educator, and a good one. And he has a lot of followers on YouTube and stuff. And Stripe has shut down his services last year. Stripe. What? Stripe is this like alternative high-tech payment solution that's supposed to compete with, PayPal and your credit cards and all this stuff, and lets anybody be a merchant and lets anybody, accept payments very easily with credit cards. Right? They're like rebels to the scene of the credit card game. And they shut down a crypto educator. Right? So that means they don't believe at all in their own mantra of everybody can have access to these financial services. Right? They're hypocrites. I'm calling them out. Right? Not a fan of Stripe. Not a fan. Never have been a great fan. Like, it's very useful, extremely useful for some companies, but policies like this are horrifying. Same thing with Patreon. Like, not a fan. Like, anyone that does this, you're off my fan list, definitely, if you were ever on it. And frankly, neither of you ever were for various reasons. Like, Patreon had a great idea, but I always thought that that idea came from the wrong place and was managed in the wrong way, and it always showed itself to me. It was never something I could jump into comfortably and be like, oh, that's a great thing. And now with this happening, and with Stripe shutting down, a crypto educator. What? Like, if you look at what's sold on Stripe compared to this, it's shocking. And what it says, right, is that centralized companies are still going to just keep abusing their power, and they're going to keep messing with people's, life without any justification other than they don't like it. Stuck up like nosy ass people who just want to put their, business in everyone else's, and it's none of their business. You can get rid of both of those parties by using cryptocurrency. And that's why crypto is so important, right? Because exactly of these two use cases, right? Unbanking the unbanked and censorship resistance. And of course, with that comes government and governance. Because with cryptocurrency, you can better govern, because everything is publicly listed on the blockchain, right? They've already done that in South America. There was an organic movement. I've spoken about this. There was an organic movement a couple years back already that literally listed every vote on the public ledger. Every public official's vote was recorded, all their public statements and all that stuff. And within a matter of like a year or even months, there was an organization that started this that was able to turn around an election and vote out the incumbents and vote in a new party in order to, clean things up, I guess, or whatever. And they would be starting, they list everything on the blockchain now. And it has cleaned up their government a lot in an extremely short period of time. Because when everything you do is not just on the public record like it is officially, but it's easily accessible to everyone, and it's there forever, and it's immutable, and you can't say it didn't happen this way, because it did, it changes the way people behave very quickly. right? It's like the germ sink at the hospital. It's like the hand sink at the hospital or at the doctor's office or the hospital, whatever. When they tell you, wash your hands, and a bunch of doctors just ignore it, but when they know they're being watched on camera, then they do it, right? It's the same thing. So I think those use cases are particularly very, very important. And of course, blockchain voting, right? Elections on the blockchain. If the blockchain is secure, then voting on a blockchain makes a lot of sense, because it's a lot harder to fake that than to fake a vote, right? At a voting booth in public in some place where nobody may even recognize you, and you can just, with a good fake ID or whatever, get through and vote, right? And this solves that. Blockchain can solve a lot of that. Of course, blockchain is not a panacea. It can't fix everything. It won't, I don't know of any blockchain that will yet fix your flu. You might use the blockchain to manage the information about your flu, to manage which medicine you get, and that might improve your speed and recovery. But the blockchain itself isn't medicine, right? It's not going to change your clothes for you. It's not going to make you toast in the morning. It might keep a good record of all of that, and it might help you do it better, but it won't, do those things. So you don't need crypto for everything, right? You don't need blockchain for everything. But where it can be used to make a difference, something that makes the blockchain and cryptocurrency worthwhile, as far as I'm concerned. And that's one of the reasons that it will not just disappear and go away, despite whatever the price points might argue today. It just makes no sense, right? You can't unlearn Bitcoin. Once you know about it, once you know how it works, once you've written any code for it, once you've mined any of it, once you've bought any of it, once you've used any of it, once you've done any of those things or others that I haven't listed that you could do with crypto, there is no unlearning that, right? I mean, okay, yeah, whatever, yeah, people can, someone's gonna write in the comment, I can hear it already. Okay, I can hear you already, an insomniac, or learned it in his sleep, or somebody forgot their memory or something, amnesia. Yeah, okay, great, smart ass. In reality, you can't unlearn these things you learn, right? Especially not when they are this meaningful. Here is a tool that is just a piece of technology, which is literally software written in the cloud. It doesn't exist in any one place. And this tool can give you financial freedom and political freedom as much as possible today. And the only thing that's holding you back from using this thing day to day is that you are only one of 20 people. Out of every 20 people, you're the one. Out of every 100 people, you're the one who uses it. The other 99 just don't know. So if you want everyone to use this, if you want this world to be freer, if you want this world to have more control over its own wealth, if you want this world to have less censorship, if you want this world to be more honest, if you want this world to have better financial access for everyone, not just for the super wealthy, but also for the poor and destitute who really deserve a better way forward. I mean, they are beheld as practically slaves, And here's the funny thing. I often see videos, I won't mention whom, but I see videos of certain people talking about their great grand life with Bitcoin because they were smart and they invested before 2000 and whatever, 15, 13, 12, and they're trying to show off kind of how much money they have, maybe to get customers to buy their financial advisor type newsletters or whatever. When to buy Bitcoin, when to buy gold, all that kind of stuff. Why the dollar is going down. The extremists out there, and they'll show you places like, I'm not going to mention, nowhere specific. I'm not talking about any one particular. There's a lot of these guys out there. Some of them are in places, exotic countries, It could be, you know, whatever. It could be Mexico or Australia or wherever the hell they are. It doesn't matter. Like, they're out there having a blast in wonderful places, living in some, you know, great, beautiful houses. They call them, like, you know, rock mansions or rock star mansions, or, you know, big fancy villas or whatever they call them. Big, large houses. And they brag about how all their freedom allows them to do whatever they want and live however they want. And they have, and they're like, and you can get on it too, and, you know, nobody knows about this stuff. And then they go on to tell you about how they love living in their wonderful house, and they have servants who drive them around and cook for them and clean for them and do all these wonderful things that, you know, for them for very little money. And it's so great because they're saving all this money living in a cheap place. And the people there are happy because they have work and they have an income. And, you know, these guys live in these fancy houses. And you can be rich like them too. And you can also go to a third world nation and hire a bunch of third worlders for very little money. Right? And what I think when I hear that is, you know who does that? People with the mentality of it's okay to go and, like, have slaves do that. Or not slaves, but, like, servants that are, you know, lesser than them. That's what I hear when I hear that. And I'm not, it's horrifying. Not, you know, okay, they're not slave owners. They're not slave owners. They're nothing even close to it, okay? Pardon me. I shouldn't have said that, because that's not right. But it is right that these guys are treating, you know, poorer people in much the same way that they pretend to be treated back home where they were before Bitcoin saved them and showed them the light and all that crap. They're going around the world talking about how great this stuff is, it's freedom and it's liberating and everything else, and yet they have these poor as dirt servants who work for them for practically nothing. And rather than help those servants, right? I mean, maybe they are helping these servants, by the way, in another way. Maybe they are giving them access to more. But they're not talking about that. They're talking about how cheap it is. They're bragging about how cheap it is to have these servants. Full-time drivers, full-time cooks, full-time whatever. How cheap it is. Well, that is not the purpose of blockchain or crypto at all. I mean, I'm not telling you to go out and give your wealth away for no reason. But if you think the purpose of finding a new tool for capitalism to gain and improve your own freedom and financial status means that in so doing you should therefore continue the oppression of others just by you happening to be using more crypto than they are because you got in the game earlier, that doesn't seem right either. That is a poor marketing use case. And when I see those kinds of examples of people selling through fear and intimidation or fear of missing out, they say to you, if you don't buy now in crypto, and they never quite say it like that, but they aggressively urge you to buy, or else you're going to miss out on the big gravy train of the future and you're going to be left out. First of all, there's always going to be other investment opportunities. Okay? Yeah, crypto's wonderful. We may never see something like it again in our lifetime. That's true. But you will see something. You will always have ways to earn and grow your capital base. So don't fear of missing out on Bitcoin or anything else, right? But do understand that there is massive power in crypto. There is massive power in Bitcoin. And if you use it for good, right? Not if you use it to go be a rock star and live a glitzy life and brag about it and sell that lifestyle to your friends and at the same time exploit your own, house cleaner and butler and driver, rather than give them a leg up and an education and show them how great this thing is that you show to everyone else. Why do you need a driver? Why do you need a house cleaner? Why do you need all that? Why can't you be just an organized person and do that for yourself? And if you believe in tech so much, why don't you just invest in robots to do those things for you? Because those things can be roboticized already. Why don't you instead give those people a better future by educating them how to be sustainable and free and all that stuff by themselves? Right? So that I seriously question people who use other people in that way. Now, I'm not saying nobody can have servants and this and that. Some people need them physically need them. You can't cook, you can't clean, you can't whatever, because you have a broken back, or you can't walk, or you don't have hands, or God knows what. There's no shortage of reason people legitimately need servants of one kind or another. And there is no shortage of reason why people can't be servants happily and enjoy it. But there's also no reason why those servants can't be paid a decent wage for their work, which, whether you think of it as lowly work or not, is irrelevant. It is work that helps other people. By definition, we should value that work very highly, not very lowly. Even if it's something anyone can do, it still has great value, and things of great value should be rewarded accordingly. I'm not saying that you should be paying $1 million to have a servant every year, but very often, and this is certainly true in third world countries, people who come and buy big villas in third world countries, and especially when they come from first world countries, they do so partly because of the affordability of full-time labor. Meaning they know they're going to be paying less than the real market value. If they were back home, where the bigger market is, they'd be paying a lot more for that service. So they move to another country to get it for nothing. And it's wrong. They're exploiting those people. And if you're into Bitcoin because of freedom and all that crap, and that's what you're selling to people, and at the same time you're exploiting people to sustain your own quality of life or comfort or whatever, convenience, lifestyle, I just don't think that's very right. And I'm not saying that whoever does that doesn't have the right to do that. They absolutely have the right to do it. I just think that's not a good example of a use case of Bitcoin, of using Bitcoin to improve your life in that way. I don't think that does improve your life. If anything, I think that I don't know. Again, not my place, because you know what? On the general basic, let's just take the given, that the likelihood is higher that whoever is voluntarily working for these people are doing so out of their own free will and are happy to be doing it and are even grateful. I'm just saying that as an enlightened person who already knows about crypto, who already knows about all these amazing things that are to come, it behooves you to enlighten those around you. That's all I'm saying. And maybe you are, maybe you aren't, I don't know, but you sure don't seem to be talking about that aspect of it. And you know who I am, I'm not saying names. You're definitely out there. And maybe this will get back to you, maybe not, I really don't care. I just think it needs to be said. I don't think it's fine when people who are like, oh, I'm a rogue, or I'm a rebel, or I'm a whatever, I'm going to brand myself with like some fancy name, like the dollar, or the money rebel, or the whatever, I don't know what they call themselves. I'm not going to say their names. It doesn't matter. But I'm going to give this impression. I'm going to have this being a bad boy and, breaking the rules, but at the same time, like, I'm pro-freedom and anti-censorship. And I want people to have, a better quality of life and all that stuff and higher standard of living. Except for my servants. I want to keep them lowly so that I can have a nice, comfortable life without it costing me more than I want to pay, because I'm still greedy. Right? That's the vibe I get from those kind of things. And it's disgusting to me. Maybe not to you. Maybe not to anyone else. But from what I can tell, like, the response to that view is people are disgusted by it. So, I know obviously a lot of people like it, clearly, because those people have huge amounts of followers, relatively. And they easily can make and sustain their lifestyle like that, probably for the foreseeable future. I'm essentially slaves to your wallet. And I don't think that that's right. So, that's what I have to say about that. But that's why I'm actually optimistic, because I think most people in this area, in this crypto area, in this cryptosphere, blockosphere, are actually not like that, right? Most of us are going to be just using crypto regularly when it becomes regular, when it becomes normal. And okay, we're, those of us in it now are early, but the fact is, even most of us in it now, um, we're going to be using crypto as a regular currency in our life without necessarily picking ourselves up and moving across the entire world, or being a nomad, or all this stuff. Most people aren't going to do that, right? Even if they have access to it. Most people have access to airplanes, and they've had access to airplanes since the dollar was very strong. They haven't just all picked up and moved all over the world, and it's not the case that 90% of Americans have left America. It's not the case that 20% have left America. It's not, the country keeps growing. It's not and the same can be said from pretty much any other country, right? Very few countries lose population over time in times of peace. Very few. They grow. Populations grow. Which means we're going to be using cryptos in the countries we live in, regardless. And also, if we move, it doesn't matter, because wherever you move to, you're subject to those laws. So unless you move to some random place that doesn't happen to have a lot of laws or whatever, doesn't have anything governing crypto, you are going to be subject, no matter where you are, to some kind of local regulation. And they may or may not affect your crypto differently in each place, or your access to it, or whatever. Right? Yes, you may technically have access to your hardware wallet wherever you are, but maybe they don't allow you to connect to the internet, or certain hours of the day. Maybe they don't allow you to, I don't know what. There's censorship all over the place in many different ways. So that's why it's important for crypto to have these strong use cases, which go well beyond just marketing use cases, but they all affect the marketing use cases. Right? Every one of these affects any kind of marketing you're going to do. If you're limited in if you can't make campaigns to help people vote, then that affects your marketing for your political candidate. If you can't make statements without having your salary impacted, well, that affects, that's censorship, right? And that will affect any campaign you want to do to recruit employees in the future, right? So that's a marketing campaign for your HR department. It will affect them, or it will affect your if you allow censorship on your platform, like Patreon did, it will allow competitors to point out that you are in fact a censoring central authority, and it will allow your competitors to say, well, we don't do that, or whatever. Point out the flaws in your systems. It's bad for Patreon's marketing, and if you if you ignore the plight of the 2 billion unbanked people, right, more than a quarter of the earth, then you have a case where it's also bad for marketing if crypto ignores all of those unbanked people, right? It's bad for marketing. Why? Because it's a quarter of the people on the planet who have no access to proper financial services, and we're inventing a new money class that in theory can support the entire world. Isn't it therefore incumbent on those of us early on in the game to see to it that we allow that kind of marketing, and that we make sure that that kind of marketing happens, and we make sure that banking the unbanked happens? Like, they need to hear about it. They need to have access to it. We need to make an effort for that. It's not going to happen on its own, but it needs to happen. That is the purpose of all of these great technologies, right? So anyway, I know I've gone on a long time about that, but I wanted to put those blockchain use cases to mind, and especially how they link to marketing and why it's important for all of us who are getting into the space. And also, if you look at Van Eck, they recently report that they don't, Van Eck is, the investment management group, and they basically said that they don't worry about the BTF, or the Bitcoin ETF application, even though the US government is currently shut down. Right? And the reason for that has actually, it doesn't have to do with any particular deadline. Right? Like, the deadline is bogus. There's no such thing as a deadline in politics, because there's always another day. There's always another, rule that can be made. There's always another exception that can be written. There's always another law that can be, written. There's always another election that can be had. There's always another day. Nothing is ever dead in that sense when it comes to these kind of things. And whereas people are running around like chickens with their head cut off saying, oh no, what's going to happen with the ETF? It's not going to get passed because there's going to be, it's going to get shut down by default because the government shut down. And people are saying, no, because the government shut down, it's actually going to get passed automatically if they shut down past February 27th because that's the law. But then it turns out that's not the case, because even when the government is shut down, there's always a skeletal crew who's around. And the SEC has also gone on to say they're absolutely not, or SEC or analysts have gone on to say, that they're absolutely not going to allow the ETF to pass by default, right? If they have to, they'll find some way to just reject it or pause it for longer until the government is reopened. They're not going to make a major decision on a new speculative asset, like is Bitcoin a new form of money, right? Which they haven't done in a long, long time. And it's not just a new form of money, it's a new asset class. Like it's like bonds or commodities or stocks, it's a whole new asset class. And they're not just going to make a decision on that when the government is shut down and make that the final decision one way or the other. That's just not going to happen, right? What they will do is they will make a proper decision about it one way or the other. Maybe they'll even make, by the way, government shutdowns. You'd be amazed what gets done during a government shutdown. Even though a lot of services are on hold and 800,000 workers are going without pay, which is ridiculous. These people earn, whatever they earn, half of them are currently living paycheck to paycheck. And the fact that they're missing a paycheck already means that they're going bust and they're suffering from this stupid shutdown. And it's the Trump shutdown because, well, he called it that and he made it happen. I guess it makes it the Trump shutdown. I'm not going to get into politics here. I'm just saying that's what it's called, right? That's what he called it. So let's call it that. All of these people are not getting their paychecks. Again, that's censorship from the government to them. For whatever the reason is, the government is not paying its own employees because of political stuff. That is insane. This is the case for censorship resistance money. People should be making their salaries and should be getting paid whether the politicians have agreed to their inner workings or not. There's no reason for those employees to not get their paychecks, right? I mean, what valid reason is there? I don't see it. How is that connected to the government continuing to run? Like, yes, the government has decided to shut down operations. That doesn't mean it's decided to fire all of its employees. If they're furloughed, they are not fired. Therefore, they should still get their damn paycheck. And they shouldn't have to wait to come back to work just because the government says they can't afford to run these operations. Okay, you can't afford to run the operation, but hang on, you do have a skeletal crew. Okay, well, if you have a skeletal crew, it means you are willing to pay some amount of salary to make sure certain things happen. Okay, well, that means that you should be able to pay the whole damn salary, because the salary is certainly not the biggest part of the problem. That is clearly not what's costing all these huge amounts of money. The salaries, yes, they're a chunk of it. Maybe they're 10, 20%, 30%. Call it 40%. But the other 60% is all processes and systems and machinery and things and materials. Right? Those are the things that get shut down. And if they get, if you run out of those supplies, you might have problems. But in America, you usually don't have a shortage of supplies of stuff. And when you do, there's usually solutions quickly coming along the way at the moment. And the only people suffering right now, really, are these employees and everyone that depends on them. Which is ridiculous. Right? So, again, this could be solved with blockchain payments that guarantee the payment of salaries on X date, regardless of the state of affairs in Washington. Even if these are government employees, there's no reason they couldn't set it up that way if they wanted to, but they don't. Right? This lets them control more people and make more people angry and go to the voting booth one way or the other, or whatever the politicians think. Right? They're trying to influence people politically, and it's disgusting. So that's also why the SEC, I think, is... This isn't going to happen by accident. And that's very clear. No ETF of a new emerging asset class like Bitcoin or anything else is ever going to get approved when it's such a massive thing by default. And oh, by the way, if it did, don't for a moment think they wouldn't reverse that. And don't for a moment think they can't reverse it. They're regulators. The SEC is a regulatory body. Their job is to interfere where they think the law is not being enforced properly and to make their own version of how to enforce the law. And they are authorized to do so by the Congress of the United States. They are absolutely outside of the law. Period. They're created by law to regulate in forms that the law is unable to regulate because the law is not fast enough and this and that. So they are given the power of enforcing more quickly, making kind of on-the-spot decisions on their own without legislative consideration, etc., etc. They are beyond the law, by definition. Every regulatory body is. And if you don't understand that, you should take a class in civics and government. That is how it works. Right? And these bodies, which are, and yes, they are lawful bodies in many sense, they are regulated as they are regulatory agencies. So they are overseen by the law, by Congress. They are overseen by the law, but they themselves operate beyond the law. They have the right to make decisions and policies and enforce those policies, even if those policies are beyond the law. Right? And that exists in this case too. So if you think that a thing like a government shutdown is going to, oh no, now everybody's going to have an ETF on Bitcoin because the government was sleeping at the wheel, you're kidding yourself. That's just what I'm going to say about that. And I will also say that if the government shutdown in any way affects the ETF in the sense that after the shutdown or during the shutdown or whatever, the government decides to actually say no to the ETF, let's say by February 27th, and the ETF is shot, and basically the SEC says no in any way, shape, or form, I would personally say that is not anything to worry about. In fact, it could be good for crypto. Why? Right? How could that be good for... Well, how could it be good for crypto if there's no ETF? Okay. Has there been an ETF until now? No. Has crypto seen growth in the last 10 years since Bitcoin was released and then went on the market? Yes. Could it see continued growth without the government and without the ETF? Well, yes, it's done that till now. Why couldn't it see continued growth? It keeps growing. Is it likely to make Bitcoin and other cryptos be worth massively more instantaneously the moment they put these things online? No. No, it's not. Sorry. I hate to burst your bubble. It's likely to have an impact. It's not likely to be the thing. Right? No one of these ETFs or trading desks or anything else will alone make or break an entire market. But they will all contribute pieces that eventually grow the market through continued incremental changes. Right? The same way that you market a website, you do it incrementally. Right? You can't do it all at once, you do it incrementally. That's how you make it grow and grow and grow. That's how you do SEO. That's how you do PPC. That's how you do social. That's how you do everything else. You grow it, right? Same thing here. You're going to grow this market. It has nothing to do with this ETF or any other one. Who cares if this passes? I mean, yeah, I'm sure the investors in it care. the people that are behind it, whatever, filing for it, VanEck, and all the people that invest in them. I'm sure they care, and they have good reason to. But most people will never buy the VanEck ETF. A lot of people might buy that ETF, and a lot of people might buy other ETFs in the crypto space, but any one given ETF, most people will not buy, right? It's just the numbers, right? 7 billion humans. How many of them will actually own VanEck ETF on Bitcoin? I don't, a couple million, 20 million? I don't know. What's that greater number going to be one day? It's not going to be billions, that's for sure. So, doesn't matter if this ETF gets shut down. And it just goes to further prove the resilience of crypto if we keep on growing without these stupid things. Now, ETFs can be wonderful. I call it a stupid thing, but it's not, they're not building this market. No ETF has built anything for Bitcoin to date. And yet here Bitcoin is. No ETF has built anything for any crypto to date. They've been announced. There's a couple of them have been announced, or they're starting to launch already. Like overseas, they've had, there's a couple of them out there. A couple of, crypto assets on real markets. And the Thai stock market just, announced they're going crypto, and or they're planning to, or whatever. There's no shortage, right, of Switzerland, obviously, going crypto. Country after country. The Marshall Islands had that whole thing with the Bitcoin becoming an official, or not Bitcoin, but crypto becoming an official currency there. There's, I think, at least 7, maybe more, stock markets basically that have announced plans. Fidelity also has announced, its own Bitcoin trading operations. Investment banks, JP Morgan, all the big guys have announced desks, right? Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, they've all announced one way or the other some kind of crypto product that they're looking into, or that they're developing, or that they're soon going to launch. This quarter, next quarter, this year. If all of those things seem like those are all happening dependent on whether or not the SEC approves an ETF, well, they're not. Right? They're all independently happening, and all of them accumulatively, when accumulated, this is the year of accumulation, everyone says. Let's see. Maybe it is. These things don't happen when everyone thinks they're going to jump to their death, right, with this stuff. They don't think, oh, let's grab this and go kill ourselves with it, like our business with this. It's not, no one's thinking that. They're all thinking this is a way to make more money. So that is that situation. And I wanted to make sure that, I raised that, because I actually think it's good for crypto that there's, I don't think it's good for crypto that there's government shutdown. I think it's good for crypto that it survives to even until now without an ETF. And would it be nice to have an ETF or a bunch of them on an American market like NYSE or NASDAQ or wherever? Yeah, sure. Be great. But it hasn't happened until now, and I sure don't plan on buying Bitcoin ETFs anytime soon. Maybe I will. I don't know. I'll look at it again when it's available. But it makes more sense to me to actually own the asset than just an ETF. I get why people are into ETFs and all that stuff, and I see that there's a potentially huge market for that. That's true. But in the case of Bitcoin, as it is a form of sound money, I don't see any reason why not to just own it. Right? I'd rather own that than a piece of paper that says I own some portion of some of it somewhere. How is that any... No, that doesn't do it for me. But there are people who want that, and let them have at it. And it will actually, for sure, have certain price actions that are interesting. And it will be a great market, I'm sure, for a lot of traders who love that stuff. But again, I don't lose sleep over that, and I don't think anybody should. Well, okay. There's so much to talk about right now. I was going to talk about 2 of the articles actually on this page. But I think I'm just going to end it there now because, well, it's Sunday. There's a ton to do. And I want to make sure that we stay focused a little bit with this topic about the impact of Bitcoin and marketing and Bitcoin in public policy and Bitcoin in finance and Bitcoin for the unbanked and all of these things, which I think are important and also upon which I have an optimistic outlook in general in the long term. Never mind the short-term ups and downs. Bear the storm. You know, be fearful when others are not, and be greedy when others are fearful, right? Or something like that. Anyway, guys and gals, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, however it is you're getting through the day, I hope you're having the most amazing day you can. And I hope that you'll join us again next time after you share, like, comment, and etc., subscribe, do all those things. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for taking part in this experiment of life and crypto and blockchain and all that. And I hope you are learning from these marketing insights. Of course, if you want to learn more about marketing insights, check out my site, YashaHarari.com. You can get marketing services there. You can download a bunch of free things like ebooks about how to e-market, how to do regular marketing and digital marketing. And until next time, folks, take care.